It's another week of Business Morning. Welcome and thank you for joining us. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwagu with tea off from the global oil market with our update as prices climbed by more than $1 a barrel this morning to their highest in more than a month, supported by ongoing output cuts and signs of gradual recovery in fuel demand as more countries ease curbs imposed to stop the coronavirus pandemic spreading. Brent crude was up $1.19 at $33.69 a barrel after touching a high since April 13. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude was up $1.26 at $30.69 a barrel after rising to its highest since March 18. The June WTI contract expires on Tuesday, but there was little sign of WTI repeating the historic plunge below zero seen last month on the eve of the May contract's expiry, amid signs that demand for crude and derived fuels is recovering from its nadir. Production is also falling as U.S. energy firms cut the number of oil and natural gas rigs operating to an all-time low for a second consecutive week. Now, the positive mood was reinforced as U.S. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell issued an optimistic outlook for economic recovery later this year. Also supporting oil prices are production cuts by the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies, including Russia, a group known as OPEC+. Now, the world's top exporter, Saudi Arabia, announced last week that it will cut an additional 1 million barrels per day in June, while OPEC+ wants to maintain existing oil cuts beyond June, when the group is next due to meet. And an aircraft belonging to a British company, Flejet, has been impounded by the federal government for operating commercial flights into the Murtala Mohammed International Airport, despite the ban on such flight operations in Nigerian airports. The Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika, says the aircraft was only authorized to conduct humanitarian flights. According to him, the impounded aircraft had no approval outside humanitarian operations, but was caught operating commercial flights. In addition to the confiscated aircraft, the minister says a maximum penalty will be imposed on the company for flouting the shutdown of the country's airspace by the federal government to commercial flight operations. The federal government had shut the country's airspace as part of measures to curb the spread of COVID-19. And President Muhammadu Buhari has approved the renewal of the tenure of Mr. Bernard Kabweze as Director General of the Budget Office of the Federation. Mr. Kabweze was first appointed as Special Advisor Planning to the President on February 15, 2016, and later redeployed and appointed as Director General Budget on June 10, 2016, to handle the nagging issues in the Budget Office at that time. The appointment was to expire on June 10, 2020. Now, the statement explained that the Budget Office was undergoing several reforms under Mr. Kabweze's leadership. The reforms are aimed at improving the effectiveness and efficiency of the organization. And business owners in the country have demanded one-year tax break, among others, from the government to enable them to recover. This was contained in the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry COVID-19 Impact Assessment Report Survey. Aside from one-year tax relief, businesses are also asking for the suspension of the implementation of the new value-added tax regime rate till year-end. They demanded these incentives for healthcare and pharmaceutical companies, airlines, manufacturers, agro-processors, small and medium enterprises, and the hospitality sector. The Director General, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Muda Yusuf, said the report was in line with LCCI's mandate of ensuring an enabling environment for the general business community and to determine the impact of the lockdown on businesses, using Lagos State as case study informed by its commercial and economic importance to Nigeria. Now, as part of its policy measures in response to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on Nigeria, the Central Bank of Nigeria in March introduced a number of policy measures. These include extending the moratorium on all principal repayments by an additional 1 year, reducing the interest rate on CBN intervention facility from 9% to 5%, creating a 5 billion targeted credit facility for households and small and medium enterprises, and more importantly, providing a 100 billion naira credit facility for the healthcare industry. Now, this scheme is available until 31st of December 2020, and the applicable interest rate is 5% per annum up to 28th of February 2021. Interest shall thereafter revert back to 9% per annum as from 1st of March 2021. Now, 2 months gone already since this announcement was made. These businesses say they are yet to have access to these funds. We've reached out to the Central Bank of Nigeria and, of course, the National Microfinance Bank to find out why these funds are not yet disbursed. Hopefully, they will be on the show to respond to this. In the meantime, I have here with me the Chairman, Research, Documentation and Industry Liaison Committee of the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria and the Managing Director, Merit Healthcare Limited, Dr. Lulu Ojo. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Joe.
Thank you very much, Lisa.
Now, you are qualified for this COVID-19 fund. Have you or any of your members assessed this fund?
Well, for want of being able to mention a company that has assessed it, I will say no. I mean, I'm not aware that this particular company has assessed it as at today. But the truth is, some companies already have their offer letter waiting for disbursement.
Now, having an offer letter and getting the money, they are two different things.
Completely different.
Do you have an offer letter?
Not yet. I'm still on that negotiation stage. As recent as last Friday, I had a discussion with my bank, and we are making progress.
So what is delaying? What are they telling you? What are they telling you it's delaying?
Yeah, I think there is so much delay between what government say it wants to do and the execution of that policy. Here, Central Bank said this money will be made available to the industry, but they are going through the bank. And the bank want to go through its normal procedure of granting credit.
But this is supposed to be an emergency fund.
Honestly, and that is the point that we are making, that, look, this is an emergency, this is a special package, it's a stimulus package, it's meant to have almost immediate effect on the operation of the company. Therefore, you cannot be too strict about what you are doing. Let's take, for instance, collateral. I mean, if by now I don't have a house to give you as collateral, you know, as at the time the CBN governor announced it, it's not possible for me to manufacture one immediately.
What sort of collateral? Are they asking for house? What sort of collateral is attached to this funding, which is supposed to be an emergency funding, you know, to shore up the sector?
It depends on the instruction that the CBN gives to the bank. And I think the instruction is that, look, you have been managing these customers before now. Just go ahead, do the normal thing you normally do before they access credit. But I think what needs to be done here is that there need to be a plethora of options, you know, available to the customer. And there are many of them. It could be insurance. It could be some other things that will not delay the access as it used to be. If you before now, if you start negotiating for credit now, it can take you 5-6 months before you eventually get something. But for this stimulus package, you can't afford to go through that route. And I think it is important that the bankers look at that and be able to, whatever, I mean, make it easier. Look at the way the COVID-19 task force has been working. You know, the chairman, that is the SGF, will be seated, will be there. We need intervention of the custom. They bring in the custom controller general to be there immediately so that it can be done. They bring in the central bank governor. This is what we need from you. The external affairs minister will be there. I think this package should be treated like that too. CBN should still have a superficial note on how this negotiation goes on with the beneficiary, so that we can bring the thing, you know, bring it up faster. Maybe almost 80 to 90% of those who are supposed to benefit from this package may, as of today, be on negotiation stage. Yeah,
Now, aside from your role in the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria, you are the former chairman of Association of Industrial Pharmacists of Nigeria. Now, how much of a role are these associations, you know, playing to ensure that their members gain access to this funding? What kind of negotiation is going on between them and the central bank?
Well, I think central bank has already made it clear. In fact, yesterday I read through the governors, the central governors' message on this. And yeah, on paper, I was quite impressed. And
but that's on paper, but in reality.
That is it. On paper, I was quite impressed because what he was saying is that let's turn this COVID-19 pandemic into opportunity. Now, for the NAHIB, the Industrial Pharmacies Group, the best we could do is what we are doing, particularly talking to our members. Yes, this money is available. Try the best you can to access it. Not only accessing it, make sure it is used for the purpose for which government intends it. You know, expand your operation. Let's have the products. Let's have it at a good price. Let it be able to reach those who are in need. You know, the bulk now is with the bank to ensure that we can get this money quickly. The customers are not, they just don't come yesterday. They have history. So it is possible that the bank could rely on some of the historical dealing with this customer to make it easier to
now, it appears that we are very good at putting things on paper, but making it to be a reality is always difficult.
We are very good at
policy.
Now,
yeah, what, aside from the collateral that you have mentioned, what are the other bottlenecks you have seen in the whole process of accessing this fund?
Thus far, I think it's the collateral issue, because it now depends on each company to present a foolproof case and to present it professionally in a way that we because it's not a bazaar. It's not money that you just take. It's not allowance. It's not the usual national cake. It is meant to come in, use it for a purpose that will benefit the community.
And more so, the 5% giveaway placed on this fund will expire by February next year.
This is where my joy is that virtually everybody in Nigeria now listening to you. This is where the central bank need to look at this now. You said by March next year, the interest rate will revert from 5% to 9%. Up to now, we have not assessed it. So the 1 year latitude or the 1 year grace period that you are giving is not there. So maybe what they have to do now is, until the last man assesses it, then the 5% stop, so start counting from there. Because let me tell you, the beauty is in the 5%.
Absolutely.
No, because it allows you to do a lot of things. No, without fear that, hey, the bank is coming for my head. It allows you to take risk that you will otherwise may not want to take because of high cost of fund. So it's a good thing, very good thing, and the government needs to be commended for it. But let's take it away from rhetorics into action. Let us make sure that we can get it done so that people can start to use it. And the Nigerians, the populace, the general populace, for which the CBN formulated this policy can benefit.
Yeah. Okay, let's just hope that both the central bank would, of course, respond to what I'm talking to them, and I'm sure they would definitely get back to us on this, and of course the National Microfinance Bank as well. But
I think you should bring them on this set too.
Definitely, absolutely.
I mean, if you have said, if you have said you are going to do this,
they will. They will be here.
And I think you should bring the bank here too.
Well, I'm sure the central bank should be able to answer for the bank.
For the bank,
that's the apex bank. Anyway, the reality is that citizens and even international partners are worried that Nigeria's health system is very weak and maybe unable to actually combat this COVID-19. Could you give us a general overview of how critical the situation is in the health sector? And how much capacity do we have to actually get this resolved?
Critical is clear that the world is in trouble. I mean, it's something that came to us, suddenly, and they call it novel, which means that we have not seen this before. And that is why you see that virtually everybody is running at a skater. It happens now that your so-called power, your war arsenal, everything that you have cannot help you at this time. It's new. Everybody is searching for something. can see the briefing of the President of America almost on a daily basis. You know, he's just trying to see what, so it's a critical situation. For us in Nigeria, before now, we are not prepared for virtually anything. You know, even the lessons that we learned for Ebola, for which we were commended, we seem to have forgotten that. And that is why this has met us at the situation that we are right now. I was telling people that, look, it is the lockdown that actually covered the face of many things for us. By the time we return to full business, then we know that we are seriously in trouble. Look at it. 90% of our foreign exchange earning comes from oil business. What is the state of the oil business right now? As it is today, the central bank has moved its official rate calculation from 307 to 360. And do we now know what is going to happen in the marketplace? They are buying dollar at 450 naira. The goods that we bought when dollar was 360, we cost it at that rate. We were selling it at that rate. We probably have not been paid. We probably have not paid our supplier. By the time you will pay back now, you'll be paying back at $450 or $500. So where is the profit? Where is the money that you can use for development? Where is the one that you can invest in research? You see, it is a critical situation. In terms of what is happening in Nigeria with COVID-19, how many tests are we conducting? How much of community involvement do we have right now? So for how long is it going to take us to increase the number of tests that we are conducting so that we'll be able to know what to do? Can you stop people from congregating? Look at the time they relaxed the lockdown in Lagos. Look at what is happening in the markets. So people will still be congregating and be coming together.
Well, of course, we know that the world is actually scrambling to get a vaccine, which, of course, is seen to be perhaps the final solution, you know, to this problem. But then there's also this fear that probably when this vaccine is eventually found, Africa, and indeed Nigeria, may probably not even have access to it. And a lot of people believe we have to look inwards. And in fact, just last week, the central bank governor announced that going to support in you pharmacists coming up with a vaccine made in Nigeria. How feasible is this?
Oh, yes. I mean, everything is possible. We have the wherewithal to get this thing done. I've said it. Talking about policy formulation, talking about coming very good idea. Nigerians are very good at it, either at individual level, institutional level, or governmental level. We have good packages. The trouble is execution. The trouble is organization. The man that you have not paid. Look at what is happening in the universities. It's all fight about salary, about this, about that. The man that you have not paid, the man that is only crying about food all times, how will he have time for the kind of research that he should be doing? In the places where there is no light, there is nothing, no infrastructure.
And the 100 billion naira is meant to aid the research for
this is the point. This is the point now. Now, it is not supposed to be a one-off thing. It has to be sustained. You know, look, let us say it clearly. It's a good thing that government came from this. And they said it openly. And I want to believe that they want to do it. It's not that they said it to make us happy. They want to do it. They want to make this money available. But let us make it clear now that it has to be sustained. It's not something that you do today and go back.
Let's even start the implementation and then talk about sustainability.
Sustainability, yes. But in terms of whether we have the capacity to do it, my dear sister, we do. We have the best brains here. You know, not only pharmacists all over. We have about 20 schools of pharmacy. We have chemists, we have biochemists. You know, it's science. So it's not just restricted to one group. So once we can put these people in the right place, motivate them, you will see what is happening. You will see what will happen. I mean, after all, before we start using capsules, tablets, and whatever, diseases have been treated. We are the one that neglected it. But with this new hope, we can come up with things that we need to do. We can do it. It's not...
All right, Dr. Lulu Ojo. Well, let's just hope that the central bank response.
I want to be very optimistic about that.
Let's get this
I read
result.
the lip of the CBN governor, and I have the confidence that he meant it.
Okay.
It's just from him to us.
Okay. We have to hear from them. All right. Thank you. We'll leave it at that. Dr. Lulu Ojo is the Managing Director, Merit Healthcare. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, still on supporting the small and medium businesses through this time. But this time, our spotlight will be on Smeden. Just stay with us. The mandate of a small and medium enterprise development agency, SMEDEN, as contained in the Enabling Act, include stimulating, monitoring and coordinating the development of the MSME subsector, initiating and articulating policy ideas for small and medium enterprises growth and development, promoting and facilitating development programs, instruments and support services to accelerate the development and modernization of MSME operations. In this era of COVID-19, these small and medium businesses are faced with a lot of hardship and turbulence. Where is the SMEDEN? I'm being joined by the Director General of the agency, Dr. Diko Rada. Good morning, Dr. Rada. Thank you for joining us.
How are you?
Very well, thank you. Now, are you aware that the 50 billion naira COVID-19 fund promised by the Central Bank for small businesses are yet to get to them?
No, we are quite aware that there is 50 billion available for the take of the MSMEs in the country due to the effect of the COVID-19. And the CBN has already rolled it on, and then it is being done through the National Microfinance Bank. But I'm aware that the MSME have applied for the loan and processes are taking place, but I'm not sure. I've not seen one person who told me that he has received the money, but I'm aware and I've been informed by a majority of MSMEs that they have applied for the loan, and we are hoping very soon they will start getting those money.
For how long will that take? Now, aside, as a government agency, aside, you are set aside to coordinate and monitor the development of MSMEs that are said to be the bedrock of the economy. What is your role in this 50 billion naira intervention fund?
Basically, we are aware that there is 50 billion meant for MSMEs, but specifically, SMEDEN is not engaged as to how this loan can get to these people and as how these loans can benefit the MSMEs. But we are aware, since we have the responsibility of facilitating the growth and facilitating access to finance by the MSME, we didn't wait for anybody to consult us. We went ahead and started mobilizing the MSME to roll into the program and try to benefit in order to improve their businesses. Basically, the major challenge that we have and the nation faces is the lack of proper synergy between agencies of government, because there is need for us to have this proper synergy because of the need for us to play the role that is meant for us to play. Basically, we are the apex organization in charge of MSME in the country. If such kind of funds are rolled out for MSME, SMEDEN need to be engaged. But basically, we are engaged or we are not engaged. That is not the most important thing. The most important thing is to make sure that the money gets to the MSME, and we are working very hard through our branches in the state, through our zonal offices in the 6 geopolitical zone of the country, to ensure that people apply for the loan and are able to get the loan, and to ensure that they use it properly for the benefit in which the loan is meant for.
Now, if I get you right here, there's a fundamental problem here. In other words, SMEDEN was not carried along in this 50 billion naira scheme or whatever. Now, you're talking about not having synergy. I know we have the Bank of Industry, doing SME, the ITF, doing SME, and now, of course, CBN always supporting the SME. Why is this synergy lacking? What can you say is the major problem here?
I think there is effort being made by the current Minister of the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, SMEDEN being an agency under that ministry, and the BOI as well as ITF are all agencies under the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment. And the honorable ministers are trying hard to ensure that this synergy is properly coordinated, and there is benefit driven by the MSMEs at the whole level. But I want to assure you that there is synergy that is going on some programs. Like we have a program that we call NADEB, which is a tripartite agreement, that is National Entrepreneurship Development Program, It's a tripartite agreement between SMEDAN, ITF, and Bank of Industry. Basically, SMEDAN provide entrepreneurship training, ITF provide vocational skills, and then BOI will provide the funding for those. But for the last 2-3 years, we have been training the MSMEs on entrepreneurship. ITF has been given the vocational training, and BOI has not been able to provide the funding. But right away, efforts are being made because BOI are complaining that they are not getting money from the government. The money they have is not a government money. So they need to have a kind of guarantee to enable them to provide that kind of funding to this program. And I think this is an area, if the BOI will be able to be funded by the federal government on this, I think the government will be able, the MSMEs in the country will be able to benefit because they are getting all the capacity development they needed before they access the funding. Because basically the challenge is when you don't have the training, you end up spending the money improperly, not to the benefit of the businesses. But with this knowledge they have, and then with the funding, I think it is going to properly benefit the MSME development in the country. And effort is being made, and I believe part of the things that the economic sustainability team, headed by the Vice President on COVID-19, is looking at how they can fund BOI so that BOI can be able to provide funding for those people trained by ITF and SMEDAN.
Now, this 50 billion we're talking about here is supposed to be an emergency fund to see these small businesses, out of this COVID-19, at least to support them. The problem now is that they have not gained access to this funding. How do you, as an agency meant to support these businesses, plan to wade in now to ensure that these intervention monies get to the right people?
I think basically the money is meant for MSME. That is very clear, and this is something that is provided by the federal government of Nigeria through the CBN using their National Microfinance Bank. I think the most important here is for us as an agency to sensitize the MSME as we are doing so, and also to ensure that we have this interface with the BMO's business membership organization like NASME, NASI, and the rest of AWEB and the rest of other organizations that are meant for the development of MSME at all levels. So it is our responsibility now to ensure that people are sensitized, people get to get the information about this loan and try to benefit from the loan. And I think we don't need to wait for anything. We have started doing that. I have told you earlier that we have sensitized our branches in the state, and we have sensitized our zonal directorate to ensure that people are sensitized through their BMOs to ensure that the money is utilized properly. And then this is an intervention that is meant, which is an immediate intervention. So that was the reason why most of the procedures and the processes were reduced to ensure that people get the money quickly. And I think the onus is on MSMEs now to ensure that they apply quickly and to ensure that. And we want to call on all the MSME who encounter one problem or the other to report to any of our branches or through our website to ensure that SMEDAN intervene into the process and make sure that the money that is meant for them to get, it has reached the main beneficiaries of the fund.
Now, have you tried to engage the National Microfinance Bank that is supposed to, disburse these funds? What are they saying? Why the delay?
No, I don't think there is much major delay as people are saying it, but I know, there are a number of beneficiaries, there are a lot of beneficiaries who applied for this, and it is not easy for the processing. And the National Microfinance Bank, they are trying hard to ensure that, and most of this application comes through online, and then they are trying hard to ensure that, because I have engaged the director in charge of entrepreneurship development department of my agency to engage the National Microfinance Bank to ensure that we get proper information as to how loan can be accessed as quick as possible and why is the delay, and then what can the MSME do to ensure that easily they can access the funding and as quick as possible. Because of the time we are now, the critical situation the MSMEs are facing now is a very challenging one, and it is better and proper if the National Microfinance Bank should increase their process to ensure that the MSME get the money as quick as possible to enable them to develop their businesses and scale it up.
Well, I'm hoping that National Microfinance Bank will, of course, come on this show to answer some of these critical questions. I've tried to reach out to them, and I'm hoping they will definitely come to give us an answer. But let's look at other programs of SMED. And you have a flagship program called the One Local Government, One Product. That's acronym OLOP. Tell us about it.
Yeah. And I think the OLOP program is a program that is borrowed from Japan. In Japan, they have what we call One Village, One Product. We adopted this program from the study tour that we conducted in Japan, which we make it one local government, one product. We have 774 local governments. What SMEDAN is doing is to identify an organic cluster, an existing business within a local government, so that we can study them, give them proper training. After giving them proper training, then we identify what kind of machinery are they liking to scale up their production. And then we provide that machinery to them. We provide a working capital after giving them the training. And then the program is meant is meant for rural industrialization, because what we are trying to do is to increase and scale up the production and to ensure that people get the necessary machineries. And that common machinery that we provide for the cooperative is meant to be used by all the members of the cooperatives at a proper time as they design it. And then we give them a working capital. And the repayment period for the loan is 2 years, with a moratorium of 6 months. And after that, they will pay back 70% of what we have given them. And then the 30% is part of the support by the federal government towards the development of those clusters. And we have gone to over 280 local governments so far. And this year alone, we are going to about 109 local governments. And part of the committee under the Presidential Economic Sustainability team, we have made a presentation on how we can increase and scale up the activities of the OLOP due to this COVID-19. Because this is the critical time now that the government needs to support this program as proper as possible, so that these people can be able to increase their production. And also, at the end of the production, we link them up with the market so that they can be readily available in the market, and then they can be able to sell their product. And we are happy that last week, the NAFDAC have launched an e-registration platform, which will enable this kind of clusters to register online, and the registration period has been reduced. They have launched it last week, Wednesday, I think, and they have reduced the cost of the registration for NAFDAC, which is one of the problems that is militating against the growth of production sector in the MSME window. And this is a welcome development, and we encourage the MSMEs to use that opportunity to ensure that they register their product online and then use the available information at their website so that they can easily get their product registered.
Now, this registration, online registration you're talking about, does it have to do, you are partnering with Facebook and Google to provide some kind of digital skills for SMEs. Is there any linkage with all of this and your OLOP initiative?
No, I think basically the Google and Facebook relationship with SMEDAN is a partnership that we entered for some years now, and the platform is meant for the digital, for the Google and the Facebook to train the MSME on how to use the information technology, how they can use computer to advance their production and to advance their market. like using the Google and Facebook to market their product. What Smeden normally do under that partnership is to provide a workspace to mobilize the MSMEs for the training, and then Google and Facebook, they are to give the training to those MSMEs and how they can utilize those platforms to ensure that they market their product and get whatever they needed.
All
You
right.
know, this is very critical, especially this time, for those
Yes.
people who have been trained over last year or last 2 years. They
All
can
right.
just be able to, they can just go into the internet and market their product. You know, this COVID-19 thing has introduced the use of technology in selling your
Absolutely.
product. And then
Absolutely.
people are buying into it. And yeah, so I think this is a very good platform. And then this, this platform and partnership that we are doing with Google and Facebook is a good one. And then we are continuing with it, especially
Okay.
now that we have this big problem in our hands.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Diko Dad Rada. And please continue to engage the Nassau Microfinance Bank to ensure that these businesses get the monies as at when due. Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right, let's look at last week's market review with Temple Ashaju. Hello, Temple. Well, we saw negative trading last week. I hope it doesn't persist this week.
Well, lots of forecasts we're seeing again for this week, and we do hope that there will be more of bargain hunting, and of course there will be more of buying interest eventually, even as some investors try to take profit. But basically, we're down by some 72 basis points last week, week on week. This was the decline that we recorded. That represents some 90.7% decline in the equity capitalization of the entire market. Even though we know that the year-to-date performance has now moderated to around 11.1%, given this number that we saw in the markets yesterday. Some of the volume shockers for the week include FBN Holdings that had 140 million units of its shares traded, and of course some 69 million units of the shares of Guarantee Trust Bank, and some from Zenith Bank. Zenith Bank, Dangote Cement, and GT Bank were also major contributors to what we had in terms of the value of the markets for last week. Going by the sectoral performances, we saw a situation where profits taking of about some 3.3% on Access Bank, and of course a couple of other banks also brought down the performance of this banking segment of the market. In terms of the consumer goods side of things, we saw Unilever, which was a major gainer for the week, up some 21% week on week, and of course NASCOM was up by some 5%. Industrial goods segment of the market saw some sell pressure on CAP, which is chemical and allied products, and of course Dangote Cement, which was down by more than 4.3% week on week. Insurance side of the market, custodian insurance was down, and of course the profit taking on NEM insurance also affected this segment. Oil and gas also saw a bit of buy interest, and that's as a result of the gains that we saw around Etana PLC and 11 PLC. But we got the chief dealer of City Code Securities and Investment, Mr. Charles Fakroga, joining us now to give us a sense of what the market will look like this week. Good morning, Mr. Fakroga. Thanks for joining us on the program.
Morning, Temple. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we've seen lately that a lot of the bank players, local players have shifted attention to the equity space, given the payouts, the potential payouts of dividends from some major stocks in the market. But now that we're seeing the aggressive borrowing program of the debt management office coming on board, propping up yields in the debt markets, do you think we will be able to retain these local players in the equity space?
Well, for every investor, they have to reassess their portfolio. So I still believe that you will still see a lot of in the week, because investors who have seen the benefits will continue to diversify their portfolio. So even if the debt market is going to see a lot of activities there, we'll still see investors who are going to hold on to their equity position, and they are going to do more in the equity space.
I'm hopeful that you have a bullish outlook for the week going forward. We wish you all the best in your trading week, Charles Fakroga, Chief Dealer with City Code Securities and Investment. That's it now, Chimizu.
Thank you, Temple. Well, optimism should be the key word here. All right, we'll do an opening call to London as well as the debt and currency market after the break. You stay with us. And how's the week starting off in London? Let's talk to Juliana. Good Good morning, Juliana. I hope you had a beautiful weekend.
Good morning, Chimeze. I did. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So what was it like
Waking up
today
here in
coming to
Britain.
work as more people resume? There are reports that new measures have been deployed on board trains and at stations amid fears that more people might use public transport to return to work this week.
Well, it certainly wasn't the rush hour that we're all used to seeing here in Britain, but there are more people travelling, at least in England today, than there were 2 weeks ago. And today, of course, is the first the beginning of the full working week since Prime Minister Boris Johnson last week Sunday urged people who couldn't work from home to start going back home. There's also an increased rail services, so rail and tube services are running at least 70%, but there is at the moment a pretty volatile row going on about how people in London are supposed to get about. Of course, we're told that we should adhere to 2-metre social distancing rules and you should not use London transport unless you have to. The government have been urging people to drive into work. Last week, however, Friday, the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, said he had to increase the congestion charge. So there's a payment that people pay to drive into central London. It was started a few years ago by the first London Mayor, Ken Livingstone. It was at around £12.50. That's now been increased to £15 per day, and that starts today. During the lockdown, the congestion charge was disabled because Sadiq Khan said that he wanted to support Londoners to not use the public transport. It started today and it's expensive. So the government are really unhappy about this. They've been speaking all morning on breakfast TV programmes, just saying how unhappy they are with Sadiq Khan and his management of Transport for London. Just last week as well, he managed to get £1 billion worth of bailout fees to cover the plummet in passengers. So there's a huge dilemma. Do Londoners travel to work on the train or do they use their car when many Londoners just cannot afford that £15? So it's definitely getting busier, but how they're going to manage this is a huge issue. You spoke about the measures, and there are a couple of measures in place now. There will be British Transport Police at most stations trying to control crowds to make sure people can adhere to that 2-metre social distancing. And they will also be ensuring that people wear their face coverings or medical masks, which has now become compulsory on the London Underground. And union bosses are trying to urge the government to make them free at all transport stations.
And Bank of England's chief economist says UK must find a way to reabsorb those out of work due to COVID-19 as high unemployment rate looms. How critical is Andy Holden's statement?
Well, Andy Holden is one of Britain's most foremost economists. So anytime he talks, people do listen, and it can drive sentiment. I believe when he gave that statement to the Sunday Telegraph yesterday, it did move the pound. At the moment, it's about 0.15% down against the dollar. And what Holden was saying is that he believes that if we're not able to cushion the blow out of the fallout from coronavirus, then yes, Britain could see the record high unemployment figures that it saw during the 1980s, which I believe was just over 3 million people. And it's a major concern for him. I must say, though, Chimmy, here in the UK, especially business economists, one of the points that they've picked up from yesterday's interview is about the possibility of the Bank of England going into negative interest rates. At the moment, it's a record low of 0.1%, and they are teasing the idea of making interest rates into a negative. We've seen it in central banks in Japan, the Eurozone, our continental neighbours have adopted that. And he reiterated that is potentially what could happen. And the Monetary Policy Committee are in talks with that. What people are expecting the Bank of England to certainly do when they have their next MPC meeting is to increase their quantitative easing policy with the government. At the moment, they're buying bonds of about £693 billion, and that is set to increase. We know that the new Bank of England governor, Andrew Bailey, isn't a fan of negative interest banks, as are most central bank governors. But considering that we are seeing it in other large economies, that is potentially a road that Britain may have to go down.
Well, it's a new week. What is the outlook like? What should we expect aside from data releases?
Well, it's data, and COVID, you know, in terms of business, that's all that anybody is talking about. But I suppose besides that, another major headline that is getting more column inches, particularly over the weekend, is Brexit. Does Britain Brexit at the end of 2020 or not? We have, of course, officially left. We left the EU on the 31st of January after more than 3.5 years of going backwards and forwards. But now, of course, COVID-19 is the main concern, not just for the EU, but for Britain. Discussions are taking place, but they're taking place remotely. And it's tense, apparently, between David Frost, the chief negotiator for Britain, and with Michel Barnier, the chief EU negotiator. They've both been very frank and open that they're finding it really difficult to come to consensus over certain issues. And it's particularly difficult for Michel Barnier because, of course, he's just not working for one country. He is trying to represent the needs and values of 27 other nations. And all of these nations have focused on the COVID-19 pandemic. There were some economists that did believe by around this date that Boris Johnson would change his mind and, of course, say that he will be extending the transition period. Britain have said that is not the chance. We are leaving at the end of 2020. And now there are concerns that if these negotiations continue to stumble, then Britain will walk away from the table by the end of this week. So a lot of people are keeping their eye on Brexit and whether or not, what some had feared all along, there will be a no-deal Brexit at the end of this year.
Well, Juliana will continue to keep a track on those. And we expect to see you later in the day for more updates.